role with the right characteristics and the right qualities. And I think she's exemplified that in everything she's done.
Over 90% of Princess Diana's personal jewelry was either inherited by her sons or earmarked for their future families.
I could probably ride before I could walk. I was brought up with ponies. My father was a great rider, my grandfather was.
So why are pieces believed to be meant for Princess Charlotte now appearing on individuals outside the royal line? How did Queen Camilla become the focus of the speculation? And what did Prince William and Princess Catherine do when the quiet trail of inheritance was called into question? There is no official announcement, no press release, and no public comment from the palace. And yet, the whispers have grown louder, subtle but persistent. At the heart of the conversation is a child too young to fully understand the forces shaping her future. Princess Charlotte, the only daughter of the Prince and Princess of Wales, has long represented more than her title. Born in the year 2015, she is third in line to the British throne and already carries the weight of symbolic expectation. To many, she is not just a royal child. She is the thread connecting the past, present, and future of the monarchy. From the moment of her birth, Charlotte's role was understood not only in constitutional terms, but through the quieter rituals of royal tradition. Within these traditions, heirlooms hold a specific place. They are not just ornamental or valuable, they are historical markers. Passed through generations, these items, rings, brooches, tiaras, carry with them the narratives of royal women. They mark weddings, state visits, coronations, and private moments that rarely reach public eyes. For Charlotte, a selection of such pieces was believed to have been identified early on. While never formally disclosed, insiders have indicated that key items, especially those linked to Princess Diana, were intended for her future milestones, including an 18th birthday or potential royal engagement. The care with which such items are handled is not accidental. In a monarchy steeped in continuity, inheritance is about symbolism as much as possession. Princess Diana's sapphire engagement ring, now worn by Princess Catherine, has become a public emblem of that very idea, carrying a lineage of memory and love across generations. The same is true for other heirlooms linked to Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Mary, and others whose lives shaped Britain's royal narrative. But where continuity is carefully curated, so too is access. The transition following Queen Elizabeth II's passing in 2022 led to a series of structural and symbolic changes within the monarchy. One of the most significant was the rise of Queen Camilla. Once a controversial figure, Camilla's journey from Duchess of Cornwall to Queen Consort was not without resistance. Her path to acceptance was long and often marked by public debate. While many grew to respect her quiet diligence and devotion to King Charles, a segment of the public never fully embraced her. The shadow of Princess Diana's memory loomed large, making Camilla's role within the royal family complex, and at times, contested. Queen Camilla's standing, particularly in relation to the Wales family, remains a sensitive matter. Unlike Catherine, who is the mother of a future king and deeply integrated into public affection, Camilla has often been seen as outside the immediate line, not by blood and only recently by title. While she shares ceremonial duties and supports the monarch in official functions, her place in the emotional hierarchy of the family is nuanced. This is especially evident when considering her connection to the next generation, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. There is no public record of a personal closeness between Camilla and Charlotte. Their appearances together remain formal and limited, where Catherine is seen guiding Charlotte at public events, and William is noted for his affection. Camilla's role is less defined. Observers have pointed out that while she performs her duties with composure, the absence of visible warmth toward the children of William and Catherine has shaped public perceptions of distance. Within that emotional space, narratives often take root. In early 2025, attention began to turn toward a quiet but unsettling development. Reports began circulating that certain jewelry pieces, thought to be part of Charlotte's future inheritance, had been seen on unfamiliar figures, specifically within Camilla's extended family. One name in particular drew focus: Lola Parker Bowles, Camilla's granddaughter through her son Tom. Lola, while part of Camilla's private family circle, holds no royal title and is not in the line of succession. When items historically linked to Diana or Queen Elizabeth began appearing at public events on individuals outside the royal lineage, the reaction was swift. Royal watchers, journalists, and members of the public began questioning how such transitions occurred. Was there a formal reallocation? Were these items being loaned or gifted? Or had a deeper change taken place behind palace walls, one that shifted the inheritance path away from the direct royal line? The answers, as is often the case with royal matters, were not readily available. Complicating matters was the palace's silence. No confirmation, no denial, just a noticeable shift in visibility. Tiaras once stored discreetly were now worn publicly. Brooches associated with Diana's state visits appeared without announcement. And notably, some of these were linked, at least by expert analysis, to the collection believed to have been designated for Charlotte. Without formal statements, interpretations varied. But the emerging pattern fueled speculation that something had changed. To understand why Camilla became the focal point of this controversy, one must revisit the emotional history attached to these heirlooms. The pieces associated with Princess Diana are not merely part of the royal inventory, they are cultural relics. Diana's death in 1997 left a legacy rooted not only in her humanitarian work, but in the deeply personal connection many in the public felt toward her. Her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, have each taken steps to preserve that legacy, including the use and protection of her personal belongings. This context is essential in explaining why the appearance of Diana-linked jewelry outside the Wales family sparked such discomfort. It was not about the jewels themselves, it was about what they represent. The reappearance of these pieces on individuals without a direct connection to Diana or the immediate royal line triggered a symbolic alarm. If the memory of Diana is preserved through ritual and inheritance, then to see that pattern altered, especially quietly, felt to many like a betrayal. Camilla's past association with the dissolution of Diana's marriage to Charles further complicates her position. While time has softened public rhetoric, and both William and Harry have made formal gestures of reconciliation, emotional undercurrents remain. For some members of the public, Camilla will always exist in contrast to Diana. That dichotomy influences how every action, intentional or not, is interpreted. In the case of the jewelry, her involvement, even if administrative or procedural, is often viewed through this emotionally charged lens. Still, it is important to state clearly, there is no verified public evidence that Camilla intentionally reassigned or withheld jewelry from Charlotte. No palace source has confirmed such action. No documentation has surfaced indicating deliberate misconduct. The reports remain in the realm of rumor, elevated by visual cues and historical sensitivity. What is known is that public interpretation has filled the gap left by institutional silence. This silence in itself is not new. The royal family often chooses discretion over disclosure, preferring to resolve internal matters quietly. But in the digital age, silence can be read as confirmation. As questions mount and narratives form, the absence of clarification can become its own kind of message. That is what has happened here. Public perception, shaped by memory, emotion, and media framing, has positioned Camilla at the center of a story whose details remain deliberately opaque. Princess Charlotte, of course, remains unaware of the speculation surrounding her. At only 9 years old, her life is still shaped by school routines, family outings, and carefully managed public appearances. But the question of her legacy is no longer dormant. It has been raised, first quietly, then publicly, and it now sits at the intersection of tradition, loyalty, and historical justice. If the question of royal inheritance had once been confined to hushed conversations behind palace doors, by early 2025, it had begun to echo well beyond. Attention sharpened as images surfaced from recent royal engagements. A brooch once identified in portraits of Queen Elizabeth II appeared on a younger woman not publicly tied to the direct royal line. A necklace bearing striking similarity to one worn by Princess Diana during a state visit was photographed adorning another unfamiliar figure at a private charity gala. These were not confirmed matches, No official inventory was cited, but for those who track royal fashion and jewelry lineage, the cues were enough to stir deeper questions. Within hours, specialist blogs and social media accounts dedicated to royal memorabilia began making comparisons. Side-by-side visuals appeared in digital forums. Journalists with long-standing assignments covering the monarchy reached out to royal correspondents and insiders. A few cautious headlines followed. None accused directly, but each one posed a similar theme. Had heirlooms promised to Princess Charlotte been redirected? The question itself was complex. Not all royal jewelry is treated the same. Some pieces belong to the Royal Collection Trust and are considered crown property, reserved for reigning monarchs or loaned on official occasions. Others are part of the Queen's personal estate, often passed on through wills or private arrangements. A third category includes items gifted personally by family members or heads of state, held in more informal custody, but steeped in symbolic meaning. The ambiguity in ownership creates space for discretion, but also for dispute. Records are maintained by a combination of royal aides, palace archivists, and senior courtiers. Many of these documents are not public. Allocations, loans, and transfers can occur quietly, and, unless directly confirmed by a formal channel, are rarely addressed. That discretion becomes more complicated when items carry personal or emotional weight. The emerald choker worn by Diana during a 1985 visit to Melbourne, for example, is often cited in private briefings as one of the pieces with sentimental value to her sons. According to multiple royal observers, certain items from Diana's personal jewelry were to be split between Prince William and Prince Harry, with the understanding that their wives, and eventually their daughters, would wear them in due course. So when such items are spotted outside that expected lineage, especially in the orbit of Queen Camilla's extended family, concern follows. Camilla's granddaughter Lola, while undoubtedly beloved by her family, holds no title, carries no royal duties, and is not positioned within the public expectations of monarchy. This is not an indictment of her character or conduct, but rather a reflection of the institutional lines that shape the royal family. Appearances of high-value heirlooms on individuals outside those lines, however unintended, disrupt a long-held visual language of legacy and continuity. Why, then, is Camilla so readily placed at the center of this narrative? Part of the answer lies in visibility. As Queen Consort, she now has regular access to ceremonial collections and increased influence over household decisions. While she may not personally manage inheritance records, her elevated status places her adjacent to those who do. Decisions made in her presence, even without her direction, are often interpreted through her position of proximity. There is also the matter of past precedent. During her years as Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla was seen wearing several pieces from the late Queen Mother's collection, as well as items linked to Queen Elizabeth II. These appearances were sanctioned and expected. But over time, a perception grew that her usage of certain jewels blurred traditional lines of succession. Critics pointed to her appearances with pieces once associated with Princess Margaret or Queen Mary, suggesting that Camilla's access, while technically permissible, disrupted the historical rhythm of inheritance. This undercurrent of public skepticism has remained. It is not merely about protocol, it is about memory. For many, Princess Diana's jewelry is not just a set of beautiful objects. It is a catalog of emotional touchpoints. The sapphire ring, the pearl drop earrings, the lover's knot tiara, all conjure moments embedded in public consciousness. When those items reappear, the expectation is that they carry their legacy forward through Diana's children and grandchildren. Any deviation from that path, real or perceived, touches a nerve. Even without confirmed reassignments, the quiet appearance of these heirlooms elsewhere was enough to create a cultural shift. Public confidence in the internal handling of royal legacy began to waver. This was not about theft. It was about symbolism. Who wears what and when is interpreted as a message, whether intended or not. For Princess Catherine, this symbolic disruption reportedly raised a quiet alarm. Those familiar with her working style describe her as deliberate, reserved, and protective, especially when it comes to matters concerning her children. She does not engage in public confrontation. She does not respond to rumors. But behind the scenes, Catherine is known to track details that affect the visual and emotional coherence of her family's role. Reports from individuals close to the royal household suggest that around this time, she began reviewing photographic archives, private inventories, and written notes from past correspondence regarding inheritance designations. Not as a confrontation, but as a verification. The goal, according to palace aides, was not to create a scandal, but to ensure that promises made were promises kept. This attention to quiet accuracy is part of Catherine's broader approach to royal life. Unlike earlier generations, she does not lead with authority through titles. Instead, she leads with consistency, by embodying the values she represents. When she appears at public events with Princess Charlotte, when she repeats traditions once observed by Diana, she is not staging history. She is carrying it forward in an unbroken line. Observers noted a change in tone during events in spring of 2025. Catherine's appearances took on new visual cues. At one formal reception, she wore a pearl bracelet last seen on Princess Diana during a visit to Pakistan in the 1990s. At a charity dinner, she wore an emerald pendant identical to one included in auction records linked to Diana's personal collection. No statement accompanied these choices, but to those familiar with royal language, the message was unmistakable. While the public discussion around royal heirlooms grew louder outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, inside, the response remained characteristically quiet. No announcements, no denials. But those who observed the royal family closely sensed a shift, not in words, but in actions. Among the most notable was the subtle emergence of Prince William into the narrative. As the future king and the elder son of Princess Diana, William has long navigated the dual responsibilities of legacy and leadership. And though he has never publicly addressed matters concerning personal inheritance, his presence behind the scenes has historically shaped decisions that affect his family's image and future. It was within this quiet space that William reportedly took interest. According to palace correspondence with long-established sources, William had been made aware of the growing unease, not through media coverage, but through internal briefings and conversations with staff responsible for overseeing the royal inventory. These conversations, while informal, carried weight. William's reputation within the royal household is that of someone who approaches institutional matters with precision. He does not act emotionally, but neither does he ignore sentiment when it concerns his mother or his children. What made the matter particularly sensitive was the convergence of private memory and public symbolism. The jewelry pieces at the heart of the discussion were not merely valuable, they were emotionally loaded. Items like the emerald choker, the lover's knot tiara, and the sapphire brooch had been seen by millions as part of Princess Diana's visual identity. For William, these were not abstract symbols. They were part of his personal archive of memories, reminders of a mother who died when he was just 15. The idea that these pieces could surface elsewhere without clear record or context was unsettling. The concern was not about theft or possession. It was about clarity. What had been promised? What had been recorded? And were those records being followed as intended? These were the questions William quietly began to pursue, not through confrontation, but through structure. According to individuals with knowledge of royal operations, William requested a review, not a formal audit, but a re-examination of archival documents related to personal jewelry items that had been designated for his branch of the family. The effort was internal, discreet, and handled by a small team of trusted staff. This move did not go unnoticed within palace circles. It marked a rare instance of William asserting influence not as a public figure, but as a family steward. His concern was not only for Charlotte, but for the broader principle of continuity. In the royal household, where protocol often overshadows personality, it is moments like this, quiet, administrative, deliberate, that reveal who holds the confidence of the institution. In this case, William's intervention was not resisted. It was met with cooperation. What followed was a series of adjustments. Internal inventories were revisited. Pieces believed to be part of Charlotte's future collection were tagged appropriately. Items previously seen in photographs on other individuals were reviewed for accuracy of origin. In a few cases, it was found that visual similarities had led to mistaken assumptions, Certain brooches or pendants were near identical replicas or belonged to different branches of the family. But in other cases, the trail was less clear. There had been transfers or informal uses that had not been clearly logged. These instances prompted updates to internal procedures, ensuring that such oversights would not repeat. Throughout this process, Queen Camilla's role remained under observation, but never officially addressed. There was no indication that she had acted improperly. Those close to the matter suggested that her involvement may have been passive, items accessed by staff members under her general oversight rather than direct decisions made by her. Still, the symbolic consequences lingered. In the world of monarchy, perception carries almost as much weight as reality. And in this instance, the perception was that Camilla's proximity to the heirlooms had allowed a breach in legacy continuity. As these internal corrections unfolded, Catherine maintained her public duties with characteristic restraint. She did not comment on the matter, nor did she alter her schedule or demeanor. But her appearances continued to communicate quiet resolve. At a service marking Commonwealth Day, she was seen wearing a sapphire and diamond pin closely associated with Diana's time as Princess of Wales. At a military medal ceremony, she opted for a pair of earrings with unmistakable ties to Diana's 90s-era wardrobe. These gestures were not ostentatious. They were deliberate and well-timed, offering visual assurance that the heirloom legacy remained intact. Catherine's role within the family has long been defined by her ability to merge modernity with tradition. She respects the boundaries of protocol while bringing a contemporary approach to her public engagements. In private, those close to her describe a figure who is methodical and deeply conscious of narrative. She does not just wear an item, she considers its message, its context, and the way it ties her children to the lineage they represent. It is in this context that the discussion around Princess Charlotte re-emerged with new clarity. Charlotte, while still a child, is increasingly seen as a symbol of generational continuity. Her early public appearances have shown a child who is confident, composed, and deeply aware of her role, even if not fully of its weight. She walks beside her mother and father not simply as a child, but as a future royal woman. In this light, the jewelry meant for her is not just decorative, it is educational. Each piece carries with it a lesson in identity, belonging, and family memory. This point was not lost on William. According to reports shared with select members of the press, his review of the heirloom records included conversations about future ceremonial moments for Charlotte, events in which specific pieces would be introduced to her, not as gifts of luxury, but as tools of legacy. These discussions did not result in any formal plan being made public, but they reflected a renewed emphasis on order. The message, quietly delivered, was that Charlotte's inheritance would be managed with care and transparency. The atmosphere within the palace slowly shifted. Staff who had previously viewed the matter as minor began to understand its broader resonance. Archivists took new steps to catalog items with greater detail. Updates were made to tracking systems. Photographs, documentation, and chain of custody notes were brought up to date. These were not dramatic changes, but they were meaningful. Camilla, for her part, remained publicly composed. Her engagements continued. Her presence beside King Charles remained steady. But some royal observers noted a slight retreat from the use of high-profile heirlooms. Pieces that had previously appeared in her rotation were seen less frequently. Instead, she wore more contemporary jewelry, gifts from Charles, private acquisitions, or items without strong historic associations. This adjustment may have been coincidental, or it may have been strategic. In either case, it marked a shift in tone. No statement was made by her office, and none was expected. The royal family rarely comments on such matters unless compelled by public pressure. But those who track the visual language of monarchy noticed the difference. It was subtle, like so many signals in royal life, but unmistakable to those watching closely. What began as speculation had now reached quiet resolution. No scandal had unfolded. No accusations had been made. But the issue had been acknowledged and addressed, not in public, but in the quiet corridors where legacy is managed and memory is preserved. By the time spring turned to early summer in the year 2025, the atmosphere within royal circles had quieted. The internal adjustments regarding jewelry inventory had taken their course. The matter had not escalated, nor had it faded entirely. Instead, it settled into the background as an understood but unspoken correction, one of many quiet recalibrations that define how the monarchy sustains itself across generations. No press briefings were issued, no official records were altered for public release. But among those who observed the institution closely, the message was understood. The legacy trail had been resecured. That message became most apparent during a late spring engagement held at Kensington Palace. It was a charity event, not a major ceremonial occasion, yet carefully observed by royal watchers. Princess Catherine arrived wearing a delicate emerald necklace long associated with Princess Diana's personal collection. The item, while never confirmed by the palace as part of Charlotte's inheritance, had appeared in previous discussions by jewelry historians and commentators. Its appearance that evening was not random. As with so many choices in Catherine's wardrobe, it was deliberate, meant to reassure without needing words. The public response was swift. Articles noted the necklace. Side-by-side comparisons of Catherine and Diana wearing the same piece resurfaced in online features. Commentators described the moment as a quiet reclaiming of heritage. Though the palace maintained its silence, the broader implication was clear. The items believed to be part of Charlotte's future legacy were back where they belonged, or at the very least, no longer in question. In a monarchy built on symbols, such gestures hold weight. They speak to continuity, care, and cultural memory. And in this instance, they also helped repair a subtle breach of trust. For many supporters of the royal family, particularly those who held Princess Diana in high esteem, the reassurance that her legacy would live on through Charlotte mattered more than the specifics of who wore what or when. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla continued to perform her duties without public deviation. She accompanied King Charles to engagements, fulfilled ceremonial responsibilities, and maintained her place in official events. But her public image had absorbed the impact. While she was not blamed outright, no credible outlet accused her of wrongdoing, there was an undeniable shift in tone. Observers noted that she seemed more restrained. Her jewelry selections leaned more toward modern pieces or gifts from King Charles. Tiaras and brooches with heavy historical association appeared less frequently. This change did not go unnoticed. Media coverage remained respectful but measured. Analysts remarked on her lowered visibility within visual royal narratives. Social commentary, especially online, remained divided. Some expressed sympathy for Camilla, pointing out that she had worked diligently over 2 decades to be accepted by both the institution and the public. Others, particularly those protective of Diana's memory, were less forgiving. To them, even the appearance of boundary crossing, intentional or not, touched a long-standing nerve. Yet no formal fracture occurred. The monarchy, as it often does, absorbed the tension and moved forward. The institution is built for continuity, not spectacle. But internally, the episode had long-lasting implications. It prompted reflection, not just about jewelry, but about roles, responsibilities, and how memory is managed within a family whose story belongs as much to the public as to itself. For Princess Charlotte, the result is a quiet preservation of her path. The heirlooms once thought to be in question are now reportedly accounted for within her future portfolio. She remains largely shielded from the controversy, protected by her age and the diligence of her parents. But what she may not yet fully understand is that her legacy has already begun taking shape, not only through protocol, but through the quiet interventions made on her behalf. Prince William, in his handling of the situation, reinforced his position not just as heir to the throne, but as the keeper of his mother's memory. His influence was neither loud nor forceful, but institutional and steady. He did not need to speak to the public. His actions behind the scenes told the story. In ensuring that pieces tied to Princess Diana would remain with Charlotte, he affirmed the bridge between past and future, between what his mother once wore and what his daughter will one day inherit. Catherine's role, equally important, was defined by restraint and symbolism. In choosing to respond with presence rather than confrontation, she modeled a kind of leadership that fits the modern monarchy. She understood the weight of memory, the importance of perception, and the value of steadiness. Her gestures, including the wearing of Diana's pieces, served as quiet statements of continuity. For the public, they were visual confirmations that the Wales family remained the heart of the institution's next chapter. King Charles, for his part, was said to have watched the situation closely. Though he made no public intervention, reports from within the royal press circle suggest that he facilitated several private conversations aimed at reinforcing family unity. These meetings, described as personal rather than procedural, focused on maintaining internal cohesion at a time when public scrutiny continues to rise. Charles, having waited nearly a lifetime to become monarch, understands better than most the risks of division, both symbolic and real. His interest, by all accounts, was to ensure that the matter remained within the family and concluded with dignity. In the months that followed, palace staff introduced small but notable changes in how heirlooms are managed. Inventory procedures were refined. Tracking systems, though never disclosed publicly, were reportedly updated. Additional steps were taken to avoid overlap or confusion about intended recipients of historically significant items. None of these measures were revolutionary, but they reflected a lesson learned. At the same time, royal communications became more strategic. While the family remained silent on the specific incident, there was a subtle increase in public emphasis on unity. Press releases highlighted multi-generational appearances. Photographs of the king with his grandchildren were released with more frequency. Catherine and William continued to focus on their work in early childhood development, mental health, and military patronage, reminding the public of their grounding in service, not spectacle. For Camilla, the months after the episode were said to be challenging in more personal terms. Those close to her reportedly described her as disappointed, not by the corrections made, but by the return of doubt she had worked hard to dispel. For years, she had rebuilt her public image slowly, carefully, through consistency and restraint. The idea that her name had again become entangled with questions of propriety and legacy weighed heavily. While she never addressed it publicly, her circle understood the emotional toll. It was not just a matter of jewels. It was about acceptance and how fragile it can be in the eyes of history. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.